After 8 years of marriage, I found her secret texts from 6 years ago. Now our perfect life feels like a lie I never saw coming. My wife Sarah, 34, and I, Tom, 36, have been married for 8 years, together for 10. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue where she spilled her drink on my shirt and insisted on buying me a new one. That led to coffee, which led to dinner, which led to a life together. We've built what I thought was a good life, a small but cozy house in the suburbs, matching coffee mugs, and a shared Netflix account with carefully curated watch lists. Happy, or so I thought. It was a regular Tuesday evening when everything changed. Sarah was trying to find an old email from her mom about a family recipe for her famous pot roast. She asked me to help her look through her laptop while she was cooking dinner. It should be from around last Thanksgiving, she said, stirring something that smelled amazing on the stove. You know how my mom is with her recipes, she'll kill me if I don't make it exactly right for the family dinner this weekend. I sat down at the kitchen table with her laptop, the familiar screensaver of us on our honeymoon in Hawaii flickering away as I opened her email. As I scrolled through her inbox, looking for anything from her mom, a chat window caught my eye. It was minimized, but I could see the name Mike from work at the top. I don't know why I clicked it. Maybe it was because Sarah had mentioned a Mike from her office a few times recently, talking about some project they were working on together. Maybe it was just curiosity. But what I found made my stomach drop. The messages started innocently enough, work stuff, some jokes about their boss, complaints about the office coffee. But as I scrolled up, they got flirtier. Way too flirty for someone who was married. There were inside jokes, late-night messages, and eventually, plans to meet up outside of work. My hands were shaking as I kept scrolling, going further and further back in time. 6 years ago, to be exact. 6 years ago, while we were married, while we were supposedly happy, my wife was having an affair with this Mike guy. I sat there, staring at the screen, barely breathing. Sarah was still humming in the kitchen, the smell of herbs and garlic filling the air like nothing was wrong. Like our whole life together hadn't just been thrown into question. Did you find it? She called from the kitchen. I couldn't answer. My throat felt too tight. Tom? The email? She came over to the table, wiping her hands on a dish towel. When she saw what was on the screen, she froze. The dish towel dropped to the floor. I can explain, she said, but her voice was barely a whisper. I finally looked up at her. Can you? Can you explain why you've been lying to me for 6 years? She sat down heavily in the chair across from me. It's not. It wasn't. She took a deep breath. It was a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake. I couldn't stop myself from laughing, but it came out harsh and bitter. A mistake? Reading the wrong email is a mistake. Burning dinner is a mistake. This was a choice. You're right, she said, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. It was a choice. A terrible choice that I've regretted every day since. She told me everything then. How it started with innocent flirting at work. How we were going through a rough patch, I was working long hours at my new job, she was feeling neglected. Mike was there, she said. He listened. He made her feel seen. It was only physical once, she said, as if that made it better. We met at a hotel after work. As soon as it was over, I felt sick. I knew I'd made a horrible mistake. I ended it the next day. I remembered that time. I remembered thinking we were just in a bit of a slump, that we'd get through it. I had no idea she was betraying me, betraying us. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled away. I wanted to, so many times. But we got better, we worked through our issues. I didn't want to hurt you with something that meant nothing and was completely over. So you decided to lie to me instead? For 6 years? I wasn't lying, she protested. I just wasn't telling you something that would only cause pain. That's called lying by omission, Sarah. And it's still lying. The pot on the stove started to boil over, and Sarah jumped up to turn it off. The moment broke, and suddenly I couldn't stand to be in the same room as her. I got up and grabbed my keys. Where are you going? She asked, panic in her voice. Out. I need to think. I drove around for hours that night, replaying every moment of our marriage in my head. Every anniversary dinner, every vacation, every quiet night at home, all of them now tainted by this secret she'd been keeping. I thought about Mike, wondered if I'd ever met him at one of her office parties. Wondered if he'd looked at me and thought about how he'd slept with my wife. When I finally came home, it was past midnight. Sarah was sitting on the couch in the dark, still in her clothes from earlier. She'd been crying, I could tell by the wadded up tissues on the coffee table. I thought maybe you weren't coming back, she said softly. I considered it, I replied honestly. She started crying again, and despite everything, a part of me wanted to comfort her. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The next few weeks were a blur of painful conversations and sleepless nights. Sarah wanted to go to couples counseling, but I wasn't ready for that. I moved into the guest room, which felt both necessary and absurd in the house we'd bought together, planning our future. Work became my escape. I threw myself into projects, stayed late at the office, anything to avoid going home to the awkward silences and tear-stained faces. My colleagues noticed the change in me. My friend Dave, who I've known since college, finally cornered me in the break room. "What's going on with you, man? You look like hell." I hadn't told anyone yet, but suddenly it all came pouring out. Dave listened, offering me a beer after work, which turned into several beers. "That's rough, buddy," he said, signaling the bartender for another round. "But 6 years is a long time. People change." "That's what she keeps saying," I replied, peeling the label off my beer bottle. "She says we're stronger now, that it's ancient history." "Maybe she's right?" I shook my head. "It doesn't feel ancient to me. It feels like it just happened." Dave was quiet for a moment. "You know, my sister went through something similar with her husband. They worked it out eventually." "How?" He shrugged. "Time, I guess. And lots of therapy." The word therapy made me think of something Sarah had said the night before. She'd suggested we try marriage counseling again, said she'd already found someone who specialized in infidelity. The thought made me angry all over again. Why should I have to go to therapy because she cheated? But as the weeks turned into months, the anger started to fade, replaced by a deep, persistent sadness. I missed my wife. Not the one who had cheated, but the one I thought I knew. The one who danced badly to 80s music while doing the dishes. The one who always remembered to buy my favorite cereal even though she thought it was too sugary. The one who held my hand through my dad's funeral last year. Sarah was patient during this time, almost too patient. She gave me space when I needed it, but she also made sure I knew she wasn't going anywhere. She left notes in my lunch bag like she used to when we first got married. She made my favorite meals. She didn't push, but she didn't give up either. 3 months after D-Day, Discovery Day, as the infidelity forums I'd started browsing called it, Sarah's brother got married. We'd RSVP'd months ago, back when we were still happy. Or when I thought we were happy. I considered not going, but it felt too complicated to explain to her family. So we went, played the part of the happy couple. It was surprisingly easy to fall back into our old patterns in public, the inside jokes, the casual touches, the way she'd look to me first whenever something funny happened, wanting to share the moment. But it was also torture, because it reminded me of what we'd lost. At the reception, after a few glasses of champagne, Sarah asked me to dance. It was a slow song, something from the 90s that always made her cry at weddings. I hesitated, but then took her hand. As we swayed together, I could smell her perfume, the same one she'd worn on our first date. She felt both familiar and strange in my arms. "I miss you," she whispered against my chest. I didn't say anything, but I held her a little tighter. That night, in our hotel room, we talked. Really talked, for the first time in months. No accusations, no defensiveness, just honest conversation about where we were and what we wanted. "I know I can't undo what I did," Sarah said, sitting cross-legged on the bed in her pajamas. "And I know saying sorry isn't enough. But I want to try to rebuild what we had. I want to be worthy of your trust again." I sat on the other bed, watching her. "I don't know if that's possible." "Neither do I," she admitted. "But I'd like to try. If you're willing." The next day, I agreed to try counseling. We found a therapist, Dr. Anderson, who specialized in helping couples recover from infidelity. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't let either of us hide behind excuses or half-truths. In our first session, she asked us both to describe what we wanted from therapy. Sarah said she wanted to rebuild trust and save our marriage. I said I wasn't sure what I wanted, except maybe to stop feeling like I was going crazy. "That's a good place to start," Dr. Anderson said. "Tom, it's normal to feel like the world has turned upside down when you discover infidelity, especially years after the fact. And Sarah, while your desire to move forward is understandable, you need to respect that for Tom, this wound is fresh." We had homework after each session. Sometimes it was exercises to rebuild trust, sometimes it was just talking about our days without mentioning the affair. Dr. Anderson encouraged us to start dating again, to try to remember why we fell in love in the first place. So we did. We went to movies and restaurants. We tried new things, a cooking class, a wine tasting. Sometimes it felt forced, sometimes it felt natural. Sometimes I'd forget for a moment, and then it would all come rushing back. One night, about 6 months after I discovered the affair, Sarah and I were making dinner together. She was chopping vegetables while I stirred something on the stove. It was domestic, ordinary. "I got an email from Mike today," she said suddenly, putting down her knife. I felt my whole body tense. "Oh? He's leaving the company. Moving to Seattle." She turned to face me. "I wanted you to know." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I told HR about our history," she continued. "Asked them to make sure we never worked together on any projects. I should have done that years ago. It was a small thing, but it meant something." She was choosing transparency, even when it was uncomfortable. The next few months were a slow journey forward. There were good days and bad days. Days when I felt like maybe we could make it work, and days when I wanted to pack a bag and never look back. Sarah remained steady through it all, answering my questions when I had them, giving me space when I needed it. A year after D-Day, we went back to the beach where we'd had our first vacation together. It wasn't planned. We were driving home from visiting Sarah's parents and I suddenly took a detour. We walked along the shore, the same shore where we'd once talked about our future together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in pinks and oranges. "Why here?" Sarah asked. I shrugged. I needed to see if it still felt the same. She nodded, understanding. "Does it?" I thought about it. "No," I said finally. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we're building something new." She reached for my hand, and this time, I let her take it. It's been 18 months now since I found those messages. Our marriage isn't the same as it was before, how could it be? But maybe, in some ways, it's stronger. More honest. We don't take each other for granted anymore. There are still moments when the pain catches me off guard. A scene in a movie about infidelity, a song that was popular 6 years ago, the name Mike. But these moments are less frequent now, less overwhelming. Sarah asks me sometimes if I've forgiven her. The truth is, I don't know. I'm not sure forgiveness is a destination you reach, but rather a path you choose to walk. Some days I'm further along that path than others. What I do know is that I'm choosing to stay, choosing to try, choosing to believe that love can survive even this. Not because what happened doesn't matter, it does, it always will, but because what we're building now matters more. Last week, we were at a dinner party with some friends. Someone asked how long we'd been married, and without thinking, I answered, 8 years. Some good, some bad, but all ours. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, and I squeezed back. Am I the asshole for not being able to let this go completely, even though it happened years ago and she says it doesn't matter anymore? Maybe. But I'm learning that healing isn't about letting go or forgetting. It's about finding a way to carry the weight of what happened while still moving forward. We're not the same couple we were before I found those messages. Those people, the blissfully ignorant husband and the wife carrying a guilty secret, they're gone. But maybe the people we are now, the ones who faced this ugly truth and chosen to stay and fight for each other, maybe they're stronger. Not undamaged, but healing. Not perfect, but real. And for now, that has to be enough.